Stephanie from Stephanie Reviews. Yes, I know it has been a long time since I've done any type of video. Yes, a lot of things have changed. Cut my hair, chopped it. I also am using a new camera setup. Before I was using my laptop. I did get a new camera, but I'm still trying to master it and trying to play around with the settings on it. So for right now, for Coffee with Conti, I'm going to be just using my iPhone, which is on a tripod, which is stacked on top of a bunch of books. So with 2018, the new year, Coffee with Conti is going to be a little bit different as of right now. I still want it to be the whole casual, it's going to be me just talking naturally, just saying what I'm saying, not really necessarily scripted, but and obviously drinking coffee still. But the thing is that it's going to have cuts in it because I do not like filming a video like this and then having to keep restarting it over and over again if I didn't say something right. So I would rather just film it all in one session and just have little cuts in it. I know that's not unusual. I know a lot of people film like that, but for the sake of this type of video, especially with, I don't want to say bulk of information, but I do have several points that I want to get through, and I have it all written down in front of me, and I don't want, 1/3 of the video is just me looking down at this paper and reading. So without further ado, let's begin. And I'm drinking La Colombe. This is not beer. This is coffee. This is a draft vanilla latte, and it's really good. Not sponsored. Really wish. So La Colombe, if you're out there. Alright, so as you could tell by the title, I'm talking about Last Tango in Paris. Yes. I know it is a controversial movie. Not a lot of people know about this movie, but movie buffs who do know it know about the controversy that is within it. So before I even talk about what I'm going to talk about, I really want to just clarify something. There was a few years ago, they came out saying, oh, Last Tango in Paris, they wanted it to be taken off AFI's list of great movies and all stuff like that because of the infamous butter scene. I don't want to be focused on talking about the butter scene. I want to talk about the movie in general. So before I get into any of that, I want to clarify something, and I wrote it down here. In 2007, there was an interview with Maria Schneider before she died, the main actress in Last Tango in Paris. And this is a direct quote from her mouth. And she said, even though what Marlon was doing wasn't real, I was crying real tears. I felt humiliated, and to be honest, I felt a little raped both by Marlon and Bertolucci. Now, is that nice to hear? Absolutely not. But to clarify, there were so many people thought that that scene was a legitimate rape. It was not. I really want to make that clear. If it was a legitimate rape, I would not even be talking about this. Now, there is a bunch of backlash from this that I will, like the whole feeling raped emotionally and all that stuff that I do want to talk about. But guys, it was not a actual rape. There was no So I just wanted to get that done with. And then also too, not only did Maria have backlash and problems from that film too, but Brando did too. So it does go hand in hand. I just really wanted to clarify that because I feel like that has been, no, everyone talks about the butter scene, but no one ever talks about what Maria really said about the butter scene. So I just wanted to get that out there before I started. But this video is going to be me talking about Last Tango in Paris as a whole and why I think I consider it one of my favorite movies. Also why I think it's a movie that every director should watch, and it is because I believe that it is a movie that it's a perfect example of what a director should not do while filming. So I want to talk about my favorite aspects first, and then we'll get into the faults of Last Tango in Paris. So my favorite aspects include cinematography and directing. Now, we know that Bernardo Bertolucci, he did The Last Emperor, very amazing director in terms of how he makes the film look. His cinematography is so good, and I love the coloring. I love this how scenes are set up in Last Tango in Paris. I think it is absolutely beautiful. I think in terms of a creative look on directing, Bernardo Bertolucci nails it. Now, with Last Tango in Paris, it is one of my favorites because I think, hands down, Brando's best work. I think there's so many scenes in here that Brando just like everyone hails Brando. And if you know me by now, like whether it's Stephanie Reviews or Coffee with Conti, I love Brando. I really love Marlon Brando. I think he's personally my favorite actor. But with this, I think this is his best work. A lot of people praise him for Godfather, but I think here and the way he is, it's because the best way I can describe it is Brando here is the most realistic version of Brando. You know, like you have On the Water from Brando, which was more of a theatrical performance, and even though he did embody a lot of naturalism in his performance there and in Godfather as well, I feel like Brando's like it's just his. It's so hard to explain. It's like he's playing a character, and his best character has been himself.
I'm awfully sorry to intrude, but I was so struck with your beauty that I thought perhaps I could offer you a glass of champagne. Is this seat taken?
No. He is himself a very unique individual, very different from most actors of that time and even most actors today. So I think Brando was incredible in this film, especially notably in the actual last tango scene. And also, if you didn't notice by now, spoilers. In the last tango scene where they're in the restaurant or in the bar, and they're dancing, I think his acting there is great. His drunk impression is stellar. And also the part where he is at his wife's funeral talking to her, I think that was riveting. I think it was so well done, and so personally Brando's best performance ever. One of the best performances by an actor ever.
Even if a husband lives 200 fucking years, he's never going to be able to discover his wife's real nature. I mean, I might be able to comprehend the universe, but I'll never discover the truth about you. Never.
I also think Maria Schneider, for a first-time actress, she did amazing. She really sold the part, and the chemistry between the two actors is absolutely incredible. Like when you're watching, it's almost, you have like this peeping Tom effect when you're watching Last Tango in Paris, because their chemistry is so natural. You wouldn't think that it was scripted. You wouldn't think that, you know, they actually ended up hating each other. Like, it's just that good acting, and the chemistry is so present and so natural and so realistic that, you know, I even showed my cousin the movie, and I asked her, and she's like, yeah, it really does feel like when you are watching it, you're just spying on people rather than watching a movie. And that's hard to accomplish, you know, not only on the director's part, but also on Maria and Brando's part as well. I think the soundtrack performed by Gato Barberi is incredible. It's also my Last Tango in Paris is not only one of my favorite movies, it's probably number 2 in my list of favorite movies, but it is also my all-time favorite soundtrack ever. I think every song has life to it. I think every song, you know, it's like a picture or like a painting. It paints every scene perfectly. It just blends so beautifully, and I feel like it captures, just the soundtrack helps embodies the emotion that the actors are exposing themselves, or, you know, what they're feeling, what the character's feeling and such. So the soundtrack, I think, is incredible. The ending. What I love most about Last Tango in Paris is that there is a justified ending. And for example, I'm going to use this loosely. Maria and Brando in their role, they are not a Harley Quinn / Joker type of couple. That's the best way I can explain it, where, you know, when you see like in movies where you have like a Bonnie and Clyde or Harley Quinn and Joker type of couple, they condone a lot of abusiveness in a relationship. Like, people say like, oh yeah, I want a relationship like Harley Quinn and Joker, but that's a disgusting relationship. And I'm glad that, you know, in the end of this movie, they recognize that that's a disgusting relationship. Maria's character, Jean, she recognizes that it's a disgusting relationship.
It's me again.
It's over. It's
That's
over.
right. It's over and then it begins again.
What begins again?
And that I think is so important because what Brando goes through and what Maria's character goes through, Paul, the characters' names are Paul and Jean. What they go through is not normal, nor is it healthy. And I'm glad that the ending, or at least rather the character Jean, she realizes that at the end. And I think that is so important because if it was a movie that, ended happily ever after for the both of them and they're together, it would have been really bittersweet because there's so much wrong to their relationship.
I'm 45. I'm a widower. I've got a little hotel. It's kind of a dump, but it's not completely a flop house. And kind of used to live in my luck when I got married, and my wife killed herself.
There is so much wrong to them as a couple. So I'm really happy this has a justified ending because it would be really, it just wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be a good message to condone if they ended up getting together and living happily ever after. So I'm really happy it was a justified, and yeah, it was brutal. It was a little bit on the harsh side. It was a Debbie Downer type of ending, but I felt like that's where it needed to go. So now let's talk about the faults of the movie. Okay, so I wrote down here breaking the boundary between natural and autobiographical. So Brando was pretty much responsible for ad-libbing, I want to say at least 40% of his dialogue, which I think it's a double-edged sword because it makes it so good, it's so natural, and like it's obviously Brando's own words, so he's able to pull it off, he's able to string out these words so naturally and beautifully. But at the same time, with certain scenes when you have a character revealing about themselves, using an actor's own words will most likely be very reflective of who they are. What happened in Last Tango in Paris is I can't imagine, being an actor doing a film where you're thinking you're playing a character nothing like you, and then you watch the movie and you realize that it's actually more autobiographical. It's more of who you are as a person in a scripted scenario. And that's what I mean, there's a boundary between acting natural and being autobiographical. Like there are scenes where Brando and Maria are talking about their childhood, and it is, and it's harsh things about their childhood too, and it is very natural, but it's because it's based off their own life. They are using negative aspects of their life to tell a story, and I think, when you're filming it, in the position, I would imagine in the position of Brando and Maria, the director saying, oh, use a little bit of yourself, just ad-lib it, just base it off you and stuff. You think doing it here and there a little bit isn't going to really matter because actors are signed up to play a character, not to play themselves. Brando in his autobiography wrote how he felt taken advantage of. That's the biggest thing. Both actor and actress, Maria and Brando, they really felt taken advantage of by this movie. And that is why I think Last Tango in Paris should be studied by every director, because of that boundary. That boundary is something you need to learn. And there's just so many situations a director can be in where they think that, okay, we're going to get the best scene out of this person, but you're going too far. You're having someone do something that, even though they may not think it's out of their comfort zone, it's just out of an actor's boundaries. So it kind of, it's also like the dangers of, very similar to the dangers of method acting, where method acting, you produce a great performance, but usually there is little to actually some harm to the actors themselves. That's why I think that's a huge fault. And even though I just listed a bunch of favorites, this fault can really damage someone. And that is something that no matter how great a movie can be, and no matter how good I think Last Tango in Paris is, that this is a learning stone. This is something that, I can't just watch Last Tango in Paris and appreciate everything that it is without knowing that there's a caution, there's a boundary, and that there's a lesson to be learned from watching a movie like this. With directors, you have to be careful when you are directing a film, the connection you make to that film. And what I mean by that is, for example, this movie, Brando was supposed to have a nude scene. Brando is never nude in this movie, but Brando was supposed to have a nude scene. And the director, Bertolucci, said he felt so connected to the character Paul, Brando's character, that he couldn't even show Brando naked because it would have been showing, it would have been like showing Bertolucci himself naked. And that, I think, is incredibly dangerous, for a director to be that attached to a movie. And I know, like, directors, like, I myself am a self-taught, aspiring director. I understand how when, directing or writing something, you pour your heart out into it. But, it should be a piece of you that you can break off, not something still attached to you. That, I think, is just a huge, huge lesson for directors, that yes, your writing, your directing can be very autobiographical, but to go so far as to say, I can't do this because, or if an actor does this in the movie, it feels like I'm doing this in the movie, that's definitely going into the danger zone. Overall, Last Tango in Paris, I think it is a great film that every director, every actor should watch, but it's like watching, I would compare it like watching to like a D.W. Griffith film, where, so many pioneering techniques, so many great things to watch, but there's still a lot of things done in the movies that you should not harness, or that you should take a learning lesson from. And definitely, I think Last Tango in Paris is one of those. And the last thing I want to say is, I think everyone who hasn't, or who has seen the movie Last Tango in Paris, or maybe who's watching this and is considering of seeing the movie too, this movie, yes, it has a lot of sex in it, but that is not the point of this movie. This movie is not about, nor should it be looked at, these two strangers just hooking up and that's it. This movie, I think, is more than the sex that's in it, more than the weird stuff and the weird scenes that happens. I advise you not to look at Last Tango in Paris as a sex movie, but look at it as a movie about, the breakdown of a desperate adult male. Like, I think that should be more of the look at, how to look at the film, rather than, because a lot of people, and I think it's just wrong, personally, with the premise of the film, to call this movie sexy, in a sense, because it really is twisted, it really is dark, and it's more so, like I keep saying, about the breakdown of the character Paul than, the sex. That is it. I hope you guys enjoy this film. This is definitely something I really want to start getting into again, and I understand that this is going to have a lot of controversy behind it, or it may not, who knows, but, yeah, I would love to hear anyone's opinion about the film, and, like, not only opinions about the film, but I would also love to hear about how I can make my setup better. Not only like camera setup, but like how I'm addressing everything, the editing, all that type of stuff. I'd love to hear you guys' opinion. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.